Hi. Okay, so this is the first video. Um, so I thought I'd record a little intro. I've been on the farm little almost 2 years now. And so this first video is just a little recap of what we did in the first year. Um, the biggest thing is just that like it takes a long time to do stuff. Like even if you could do everything right at once. Like you kind of don't want to. Like the first thing you'll see, like we laid fence. Well, we did like a temporary fence. And within like 3 months, I was like so glad that it was temporary because I changed my mind of where I wanted the fence line. And, I wanted to see what came in the garden before I like started weeding really heavily or anything like that. So it just takes a lot of time. So the first two videos are going to be recaps of the first year and second year, um, just to give you an idea of like where we're at. Okay, the very first thing I did, literally the weekend I got the keys, was that I deep cleaned this duck coop. The property came with both ducks and chickens, and I truly don't know when it was cleaned last before I bought the place. It was pretty gross. So that was the very first thing I did. And then the next big thing that needed to be addressed was this pasture. This was the only existing horse pasture that was fenced on the property. If you don't know anything about horse pasture, they're not supposed to have this much water in them. They're not supposed to be a swimming pool for ducks. The pasture had been pretty overgrazed, and also there was some grading issues. So this is kind of an ongoing project. You'll definitely hear more about it later. And I'll share more about the pasture specifically. But the first order of business before moving Grace in was to build a new pasture, a temporary pasture to use instead while that one rested. So I roped my poor family into setting up a pasture with, we used temporary electric fencing and T-posts so that we could easily move it if we wanted to change the location of it, and create something that we could use instead of the existing pasture. And then it was time to move Grace in. When she first got here, she wore a grazing muzzle because she'd been somewhere without a ton of grass, and I wanted to introduce her to the new grass pretty slowly. I also found somebody looking for a pasture situation for their horse to be her companion. Grace has never lived alone without other horses, so she definitely needed a herd mate. Reno is a really sweet guy. He did end up going back. They didn't get along super great. So more on that later. And then it was planting time. The old owners put in the most beautiful garden, and I was really excited to just kind of let it come in, grow in for the season, and just see what was planted, see what was dormant under the soil. So I didn't plant a ton in my first year here, but I did plant a few things just because I couldn't help myself. And it was really exciting to see what came up. This is Chunky. He came with the farm. When I was closing on the farm and I asked what his name was because the owner hadn't told me yet, he said, "Oh, him, he's just a simple chunky man." I think the story is that they found him in a trash can somewhere eating birthday cake. So after Reno left, it was time to try and find Grace some new buddies. So enter the Shelby brothers. These guys are, they're actually wild burros. They're not donkeys. I'll share a lot more about them later, but they were in need of a home, and Grace has a particular affinity for donkeys. She really loves them. She's very obsessed with them. So I figured they'd be a great fit, and they have been. And then it was summer. Summer was filled with all kinds of projects, just trying to get things moving and working in good systems. One thing I'm still actively trying to figure out is manure management, because when you keep horses, you have manure. This was my first attempt at the manure composter. It didn't really work, so more on that later. And then it was fall. I mentioned that I wanted to see what the old owners had planted and what would come up, and I was pleasantly surprised with so many beautiful flowers. So fall was filled with harvesting and trying my hand at a lot of flower decorating, and it was wonderful. And then we deep cleaned the loft, the hay loft, in the barn so I could store hay for winter. So Christmas rolled around and we had had pretty mild weather at that point. I'm not someone who likes cold weather at all. And I had a big awakening coming come January. But Christmas was lovely. It's crazy to look back on this year and break it down into a 10-minute video. So much happened and so much still needs to happen. But all in time.